Good morning and happy Sunday, everybody. This is Club Fantasy's Dynasty After Party. I'm your host, Joshua Hudson. With me, as always, Mr. Joel Wirth. And today, we are one more episode closer to the conclusion of our Dynasty Team Preview episodes. It's our brand-wide A Look Inside Team Preview series. And today, we are going to be covering the Buffalo Bills, the Detroit Lions, and the Baltimore Ravens. We're going to find all those dynasty values, the players that you should probably be looking to sell, and some other fun topics in between. So stay tuned. Welcome. Happy Sunday. I'm Josh. That's Joel. This is Dynasty After Party. Joel, how you doing this morning, buddy?
It's a beautiful morning. The sun is shining. The birds are singing. Jordan Love is locked into the Packers for the next 5 years, so for 5 seasons. It's a beautiful, beautiful day.
Yeah, I saw those QB deals, and I'm like, whoo, man. Dak Prescott's just sitting there being like, let's go, Jerry.
Yeah.
Makes me very happy to be an Eagles fan because we got that deal with Jalen Hurts done way early.
Exactly.
And he's now looking like a bargain, baby.
And like I saw a lot of people, I mean, we'll probably hit this in a little bit, but a lot of people on Twitter saying, oh, you're going in on Love on such a small sample size. What was the alternative? Right? I mean, if you wait till next year, you get him another year. Now Purdy's going to get $60 million. Dak's going to have $60 million. All you're doing is adding on to the number. So yeah, you have to do it now. It's ridiculous.
I mean, it was the same thing.
It's the price you have to pay for a franchise quarterback. So you pay it and you move on.
Yep. Yeah, and I know that like the topic, and you know what? Let's kind of just dive right in here with the headlines and just kind of get it rocking and rolling here. Tua, Jordan Love, they get their contracts. Surprisingly, both are 4-year deals, unlike the previous 5-year deals that have been kind of getting thrown around earlier this offseason. Tua's, I believe, was a 4-year, $212, and Love, I believe, was 4-220. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
But I did find that a little interesting. Now, I mean, you look at the body of work with both of these guys in comparison to, like Lamar, Joe Burrow, Herbert, Jalen Hurts, some of these other guys that have signed those bigger deals. I feel like there's more questions with Tua and Jordan Love in comparison to the other guys. Tua obviously has had a problem staying healthy with the concussions, but when he plays, and he played a full season last year, led the entire NFL in passing yards, right? Yes, we know he hasn't won a playoff game yet. You know what? There are a lot of quarterbacks in their first 5 years that have barely won any playoff games, right? It's just the price of franchise quarterbacks. It's just what it is. Like, not every quarterback is going to be Tom Brady. Not every quarterback is going to be Patrick Mahomes. Some of these guys, like Matthew Stafford, didn't win a championship till he'd been in the league for, 9 years? 7 years? Something like that? Like, it's so rare because you have to get through a very violent game for 17 plus games and then the playoffs, or 17 games and then the playoffs. So close to 20 games in a season. It's very difficult to get to that point. That's why there's so few quarterbacks, not just in current NFL, but NFL history, that have won multiple Super Bowls. And I feel like that is the point that is very lost on some people. And I know I'm going to get into it with my co-host Joe Zolo on Wednesday about this exact topic. So, Joel, give us your thoughts on these two deals specifically.
So, yeah, a couple things. Like, one, what's your plan B, right? What's your option? Like, if you're going to go away from Tua, if you're going to go away from Love, where are you going? If you're going to go away from Trevor Lawrence, where are you going? You're going to go into the draft next year with, a pretty sketchy quarterback class, and you're going to try and develop someone from there just to get to this point again, hopefully, or you're going to try and throw $70 million at Dak to be the high bidder. If the Cowboys don't sign, we go with Daniel Jones. I mean, what's your plan B? So, yeah, I think that's the most important consideration. Second is, like, you talked about there's 5 quarterbacks in the league right now who have won a Super Bowl? Mahomes, Stafford, Rodgers, Wilson, Flacco. Flacco's a backup, and Rodgers and Wilson are on their last legs.
Yep.
I mean, Mahomes has won so many Super Bowls that you just can't use that as a standard because there's just not that many players in the league who have won.
And it's the same thing with Brady, right? Brady won 7 of them.
Right,
so
exactly.
Who else has a shot to win one at that point?
Yeah, and you talk about Rodgers was 2010. That was almost 15 years ago. Flacco was even longer than that. Wilson was 14, 15, something like that. I mean, so that was almost close to 10 years ago. They're just, other than Stafford and Mahomes, nobody has won a Super Bowl recently other than those 2 that's still active.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean,
that standard is just utter nonsense.
A lot of these guys really don't even hit their stride until 7-8 years into it. And really because they did away with the non-rookie scale contracts.
Yep.
So like they hit free agency before they really hit their peak, especially at the quarterback position. So you ultimately have to pay them before they even hit their stride. Yep. And sometimes, that can be crippling. But also, if you're smart, like the Eagles were when they got out of it early with Carson Wentz to move into Jalen Hurts, that's really what it boils down to is some of these teams, when they ultimately make these deals for these quarterbacks, they're hanging on too long instead of saying, we just got to cut bait. That's what Denver did with Wilson. They gave him all that money and said, you know what? This just isn't it. We'll eat it this year. We'll get out of it. We'll move on, right? Eagles did it with Carson Wentz. We'll get out of it. We'll move on. We'll make the transition. Did it hurt for 1 year? It did, sure. But it allowed Jalen Hurts to kind of grow, and they made a surprise playoff appearance. And then they made the Super Bowl the next year. You say what you will about last year. This year's a new year. But some of these teams, it's just once you give these players the money, it's like, no, we're married to you, and we're going to see it through. And that's just stupid mentality, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the market. This is the going rate for quote unquote franchise quarterbacks. You have to pay what you want to pay. You want to play, you got to pay. That's the deal. It is what it is. So if you have someone who looks like they could be a franchise quarterback, you got to pay him.
Correct. And then moving into the wide receivers, we've seen some big money wide receiver deals, and a couple guys holding on for new contracts. One is actually holding in. He's at camp. He's there. That's Brandon Aiyuk. The other one said, give me my money. I'm not stepping on a practice field. That's CeeDee Lamb. So, Joel, do either of these deals get done? And if so, who's first?
Who's first is tough. I think they both get done, right? I mean, with Aiyuk, he saw Debo do this exact same thing 2 years ago. He had a front row seat for it. It's gonna get done. How far apart can they be? Like a couple $1 million? He wants 30 million.
San Francisco's also dealing with Trent Williams holding out also.
Yeah, right. So it's going to get done. They always get it done somehow, some way. Like Bosa held out and he got his money and he was just fine when he played. So, yeah, I'm not worried about Aiyuk at all. I'm not worried about CeeDee Lamb. My concern is just the Cowboys being really stupid. I mean, what are they doing? We talked about this the other night. What was the point of this entire offseason? You knew going in that you were going to have to sign Dak and Lamb and Parsons at some point and figure out what you're going to do with them going forward. So you probably should have done that early, but you didn't. So you missed out on the entire free agent class. And then now you still got the same problem you went into the free agent or you went into the league year with. So yeah, what is your plan? What are you waiting for? I mean, now you're at a point you've waited so long where you have to pay him more than Justin Jefferson. So I'm sure it's going to get done. It's just they've waited so long that they're basically screwing themselves because of their procrastination, basically.
Yeah, and I guess the reports that were coming out were Lamb and Micah Parsons both want to be the highest paid non-quarterback.
Right.
So now, like, one of them obviously is going to be pissed at that point. And Dak is just kind of sitting here like, we know he's about to be the highest paid quarterback because what are they going to do? Let him walk in free agency? Like,
well, they got Trey Lance.
That's stupid. We'll see how well that works out for Dallas. I feel like that's why they've been so hesitant with Dak, is they're just like, oh, we've got a former top 3 overall pick, so we're just going to kind of like pass the reins on to him. And then you realize that, he's not the top 3 overall pick that we all thought he was. And this is going to blow up so great in Dallas's face. And this little Eagles fan over here is just Jerry Jones is the stand-up comedy that just keeps on giving.
It is. Like I said, that team has the absolute potential to be just a massive disaster this year.
Oh my God. It's so much fun. Can't wait. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Brandon Aiyuk gets done. I don't think if Lamb gets done, it's going to be literally right on the cusp of the season, but I'm not 100% convinced it does. And in which case, I'm going to be adjusting my wide receiver rankings, because him missing all of training camp, I don't think he ends up as the wide receiver 1 this season.
And if the more camp you miss, the more likely. I mean, it's just, we've seen it in the past where these skilled position players, when they miss a lot of camp because of holdouts, the injury rate is really high with these guys. So that becomes a real concern.
Yep, 100%. All right, before we get into these previews, be sure to check out Dynasty Nerds. Yes, it's our latest partnership, dynastynerds.com. They have all the great tools with their different memberships. You have everything from rankings, their all-22 film room, their Dynasty trade calculator. They have their Discord community. So many great features that Dynasty Nerds offers, and we're so incredibly happy to be able to partner with them. So head over to dynastynerds.com, pick the membership that you would love to utilize, enter promo code CLUBFANTASY, and save yourself 15% off that membership. Once again, dynastynerds.com, use promo code CLUBFANTASY, save yourself 15%. All right, Joel, let's kick it off. We're leading with the Buffalo Bills. Some stability here in the front office. You got Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, the head coach. Both of these guys have been here for 8 seasons. Joe Brady is now the permanent play caller after unseating incumbent Ken Dorsey midway through last season. So it's going to be a same-ish offense is what I like to call it. Definitely more of like week 11 to 17 probably than weeks 1 through 10, but same usage either way. Quarterback, Josh Allen, we all know how good and great he is. He's 28. Running backs, James Cook is 25 heading into his 3rd season. And then the rookie, Ray Davis, also 25.
Also 25.
That's concerning. Pass catchers here on the team. Keon Coleman is 21. He was drafted this year at the top of the 2nd round. They brought in Curtis Samuel in the offseason. He's 28. He's heading into his 8th season. Wow, he's been in the league a long time. Fun note, he had his best season with Joe Brady in Carolina. So maybe something to note there. Khalil Shakir, 24, heading into his 3rd season. And then Dalton Kincaid, rookie tight end, tight end drafted last year in the 1st round, 25. He's heading into his 2nd season. All right, Joel, this is kind of where I want to start. Let's start with Dalton Kincaid, because I feel like a lot of people, they're putting a lot of emphasis on these young tight ends, especially in redraft, right? We know that young tight ends, if they show any signs of, high target shares, production, touchdowns, whatever it may be, they instantly vault to like the top 5 of the Dynasty tight end rankings. And then you get like the veterans that have been doing this a long time have just kind of like fallen to the wayside. We know how good Josh Allen is. We know how good Josh Allen has been. We know there's a void at pass catchers here. In your eyes, what can Dalton Kincaid do to be the tight end 1 in Dynasty?
I mean, it's not out of the question by any stretch. He's never going to block, right? He's an atrocious blocker. That was my concern with him as a prospect coming out, is Just an absolutely god-awful blocker, doesn't even try. So he is going to have the Jimmy Graham, just basically split seam tight end. That's all he's ever going to do. So for fantasy, that's good, right? That's what we care about. I think it's probably likely that he's the highest targeted receiver in the Bills locker room, in their receiver room. Whether or not he's a wide receiver technically or by designation or not, he will be their highest targeted receiver. So if he puts up a 90-ish catch, pushing double-digit touchdowns, and this offense continues to just kind of hum along post Steph Diggs, then I think, I think there will be some people who will consider him the tight end one. So, I don't think it's out of the question. I don't think it's likely just because of the competition. LaPorta, McBride, all these guys who I think probably have better cases, but I don't think he'll ever be the consensus tight end one, but I think there will be pockets of people who would rate him that way.
Yeah, I mean, Travis Kelce's been the tight end one for years forever now, right? Obviously, that's starting to slip with, Sam LaPorta coming in and being as good as he was last year and actually being the, tight end one in fantasy last year. To me, the big question, and you bring up some of these young guys like Trey McBride, Sam LaPorta, both of them had pretty strong seasons last year. Dalton Kincaid wasn't a bad season by any means. I mean, he had 91 targets, which, for a rookie tight end, sign me up for that, right?
Yep.
Then, of course, Kyle Pitts is still there. He's heading into year 4 now?
Yep.
God, that feels like he's been what? Okay. But you're still going to have some Kyle Pitts truthers because, out of all these guys we're talking about, he's actually had a 1,000-yard season, right? So,
and he's younger than Kincaid too.
And there's also that. But you could make the argument that a lot of what made Travis Kelce so good was that he was tied to Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yep.
Dalton Kincaid is tied to Josh Allen. So why shouldn't he be rated above these other guys, especially when, as of right now, there is no dominant target hog wide receiver a la Travis Kelce?
Yeah, I think, and you brought up his season last year. I mean, it was very heavily back-weighted too. So there was, you could see the development curve kind of made sense that way. So yeah, like you said, and we outlined before, there is a, fantasy statistical case that he could definitely get himself into that discussion. He just has to do it.
Where do you have him in your Dynasty tight end rankings, or tiers, I guess, because I know you do more tiers versus rankings?
I would have him outside the top tier. I would have him behind Pitts myself, but kind of right there with that group. After the Kelce's, and I would still take Andrews ahead of him just because I think we know what we're going to get with Andrews. And every case you can make for Kincaid, you can make for Andrews, right? He's tied to Lamar Jackson. He's in a potentially better offense. He's a more important role in that offense just because they have, same case, right? They really don't have any real wide receivers that are going to dominate targets. So, but yeah, I think he's just kind of on that tier 1, tier 2 fringe.
Okay. That's interesting to me. I was going through and finishing up my projections just for this year in 2024. And right now, Dalton Kincaid says is my tight end 2 heading into the season, based on, potential target share and volume, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of that, obviously, there's no definitive, target hog in this offense. So, Kincaid should see some level of a spike. I will say my biggest worry is the Bills' usage of Dawson Knox and how often they use him on the field because, he is a good blocker. They trust him, especially in the red zone. So I'm curious your thoughts on this. Do you think we could see a scenario where Dalton Kincaid is the between the 20s tight end, and then Dawson Knox is that red zone tight end, and Dalton Kincaid has this great season and then has 2 touchdowns?
Yeah, very much. And this is a case where I would much rather have Kincaid in tight end premium than not, because in non-tight end premium, touchdowns become kind of paramount for your tight ends. And Dawson Knox, like you said, is not going away. They signed him to an extension. He's always had a kind of goal line role. He's got the connection with Josh Allen. So yeah, I think there's certainly a case where Knox could end up with more touchdowns than Kincaid does.
which would be really disappointing considering in the 2 seasons, or I guess technically 3 seasons, he was in Utah. He had 14 touchdowns. So, like, he can get open in the red zone.
Yep.
So, and that was a lot of my big case with Kincaid. I feel like he was, very misused last year. All right, I got to throw this up from Coop because this is just funny. Most people know Andrew Cooper, Coupe Fiasco over on Twitter. Tight end whisperer, aficionado over here. He's been emailing Dalton Kincaid to see if he wants to be best friends with me. Haven't heard back yet. So apparently we're not on the Dalton Kincaid train yet. So Coop, thanks for that heads up, buddy. I appreciate that.
I mean, the other thing is if you look at the Bills offense, I mean, the way they operate, like inside the 10, it's a lot of running, it's a lot of Josh Allen, and it's a lot of Dawson Knox. So how does Kincaid kind of work his way into that dynamic? It's really going to be important if he wants to kind of ascend to that, as a permanent like top 5 tight end level.
Well, and I think this could be where maybe we see where Joe Brady's offense evolves from, right? Like that was the Brian Daboll, Ken Dorsey kind of side of how this offense was run. Now let's see what Joe Brady can cook up, kind of thing. So, all right, let's move on to Keon Coleman. Obviously, the rookie comes in. Great press conference. Love this kid in front of a microphone. I want him to be so good just because if he's good, people are going to want to keep talking to him. We know that this offense has never had an issue hyper-targeting somebody, right? That's why they brought in Stephon Diggs, 150-plus targets. I believe it was for 4 straight seasons, 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Keon Coleman, not exactly built the same way as Stephon Diggs, right? So where do you see, I guess, his ceiling being based on what Josh Allen has been as a quarterback, what this offense has helped bring to light, what Joe Brady's history with play calling has been? If you look back to, even like the LSU championship days in 2019 to Carolina in 2020, can he be a top 12 wide receiver, or is he just kind of like, in Terry McLaurin level purgatory in Dynasty rankings?
Where I think he can really win is kind of teaming with Josh Allen on like an improvisational level, to where, I mean, if you look at his prospect profile, he had obviously real issues with separation. His 40 time was terrible. So yeah, I think if you want to use him the way they use Steph Diggs, then you're in trouble. And he's prospect wise, or as developmentally, he's in a lot of trouble. Where I think he had like superior hands. He's got great size. He's 6'4", 210, 215, something like that. So I think, like, I wanted to see him just go somewhere where he could just be like a full-time Michael Thomas level power slot receiver. That's probably not going to happen when you've got Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel on your roster. Those guys are going to, and no really kind of boundary receiver. He's going to have to kind of play on the boundary. But I think just because he has such great hands, because of the size, he can just kind of box guys out. I think if he gets on the same kind of wavelength with Josh Allen, I think that kind of, I think you can almost see like a Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce level relationship kind of develop between the two of them, and that they, if they can get on the same wavelength, then he could be a guy that, when Allen is extending plays and stuff like that, that he can really look for and find. And I think that's his path to success in the NFL.
So, I mean, this could be a scenario where they run a lot of, 3 and 4 wide. You throw, I mean, they do have, I believe, Chase Claypool on the roster. They have MVS on the roster. Claypool's always been better cast as a big slot. MVS plays on the outside. We know about his hands, and we get all that. But he can get deep, right? That's what keeps defenses honest. And I think that plays to kind of what you're talking about with Coleman potentially playing that sort of like Michael Thomas level, like, inside big slot. But even that, Thomas played outside, right? He just worked kind of between in the tens, right? He's that short to intermediate kind of receiver where he can utilize his hands and get upfield and do the things that he needs to do. So, I mean, I guess really it kind of depends on how you feel about Shakir. I know there's some people like Ryan Weiss that, love Shakir and think he could be something. Curtis Samuel obviously has the history of, being a reliable wide receiver. Maybe nothing special or great, but he performs better out of the slot, mainly because of his size. So, but I mean, if they're running, these spread formations, I think that, they can work some motion, do a lot of different things. And, Coleman does work his way from outside to inside and create some of these mismatches. But I'm really curious to see how they ultimately utilize Coleman, because I think that's going to give me and probably a lot of other people a lot more clarity on where that ceiling is. Can he be that, top 12 wide receiver? Is he more of like a wide receiver 2 in Dynasty? Maybe he has like a pop, top 12 season kind of thing here and there. But the way they're planning, I believe, just kind of feels that that's really what they're planning, is to spread the ball around more and not really have like one player they're just going to hyper target. Because then you keep in mind they've got James Cook coming out of the backfield. There's weapons all over the place here. So I'm going to be this is a very enigmatic offense, in my opinion, when you're looking at Dynasty tiers and rankings.
It's going to be a very non-traditional offense in that they don't have, a traditional X, a traditional Z. I mean, you got a ton of Ys, right? You're going to have Kincaid, you're going to have Samuel, you're going to have Shakir, who can all kind of run in the slot in the intermediate, kind of between the hashes area. So how they kind of work this out, like you said, this is how this Brady offense evolves. It's going to be very interesting to kind of watch.
All right. So let's switch gears. Let's talk about the guy that's going to be slinging that rock. Josh Allen you can probably make the case for him or Patrick Mahomes as the Dynasty QB1 over the last few years. Some people prefer the safety that Patrick Mahomes offers because he doesn't put himself in quote unquote harm's way because he doesn't run near as much. Josh Allen has just been that fucking dude. Let's call a spade a spade. Throwing for over 4,000 yards, rushing for over 700 yards. There's just not much else he can really do to tell people, look, I'm that guy. But now you take away his top target. He, by all accounts, doesn't have the most reliable weapons. First off, is he still your Dynasty QB1, Joel?
Yeah, basically. I mean, it's him or Hurts, but yeah.
So you put both of them over Mahomes?
Yes.
Would you put Lamar Jackson over Mahomes?
Would I rather have Lamar Jackson in any given year than Mahomes? Yes.
Okay.
Mahomes' value is in his safety.
That's fair. That's fair. All right. So how bad do things have to go this year for you to second guess Josh Allen as the QB1?
I mean, you would basically they've kind of talked for years about trying to reduce the number of hits he takes and reducing the number of how much rushing he's going to do around the goal line and stuff like that. He had 15 touchdowns last year. So, I mean, if that comes way down, 15 rushing touchdowns, if that comes way down and they're not using him around the goal line, like if Ray Davis becomes a goal line back, a Jerome Bettis level goal line back who's just taking all these touches away or, these goal line touches away from Josh Allen, then maybe, but I don't see that happening. So, yeah, I think that's a pretty narrow path to him not being an elite option going forward.
All right. Yeah, I think I can see that. I don't know. This backfield isn't built to save Josh Allen from rushing, though. That's why I still think that he's going to be that guy. Like, you can sit here and tell me all you want. You want to try to protect Josh Allen, but look, when you've got a freaking lion, you're not going to make him a vegetarian. Let's be real. Like, the man eats in the end zone. Let him fucking eat. All right. So I want to bring this.
Shane Steichen has done this with the Colts, right? He's saying, yeah, Richardson's taking a bunch of hits, but that's how he wins. That's how he's successful. That's what we're going to keep doing. So at least he's honest about it, right? I mean,
exactly right.
This BS, but they're not changing that.
Nope. Not at all. All right, I want to bring this up. This question from Joe here. So he's in a Superflex league for the first time. It's a 12-man league. obviously Superflex values quarterbacks, 12 team, obviously a lot more than say your 10 teams. In your eyes, Joel, are you targeting quarterbacks with your first 2 picks?
I do. Not everyone is like me, but I'm someone who wants to build my team around the scarce positions, and quarterback is obviously the scarcest position in a super flex. So that's the way I would attack it. And it kind of depends on your draft position, right? If you're at the top, you have 1 or 2, and you get a Josh Allen or a Hurts, and then you can kind of come back and take an elite receiver, and then like nominally take another quarterback at in the 3rd round. That's really not that much different from the 2nd round. That's fine. But yeah, I'm almost always in a super flex taking quarterbacks, at least 2 in the first 3 picks.
So Joe chimes in. He says he's picking from the 5 spot. Does that change anything?
No, then I would almost certainly take 2 quarterbacks in my first 2 picks, depending on how
it
falls,
for me,
right? If you got a super heavy QB draft and like 12 of the first 15 are quarterbacks, then maybe you want to kind of go a different route. But yeah, in a typical league, I'm almost certainly taking two quarterbacks in the first, what would that be, 22 picks, something like that? Or 19 picks?
I think for me, when you're sitting at 5, I figure you got to assume that your top guys, Allen, Hurts, Lamar, Mahomes. Who's your 5 at that point? I'm just curious.
Probably Burrow.
Yeah, well, and then you could also
Burrow, Richardson,
Stroud. Yeah, Richardson.
Yeah, I mean, like some guys there. Burrow, Stroud, and Love are all the same guy to me. So yeah, whichever one you like.
That's fair. So, and I mean, coming on the kickback, but yeah, I think the biggest thing is how many quarterbacks are going to go in the first round, right? Like if 10 of the first 12 picks are in the first round, I'm not going to reach for that second quarterback. Like I would much rather, 3rd, maybe 4th round, just kind of depending how things go. If there is a 3rd round reversal or not, you could probably end up getting a guy like Jared Goff,
exactly.
Tua, a little bit later. Maybe you take that high end tight end, you take the high end wide receiver. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can roll with that. But I think I'm kind of with you, like maybe 2 in that first 3, but you kind of have to see how the board's going to fall. I don't like jumping in saying, all right, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Kind of let the board sort of dictate how you want to do things. And, Purdy being another like top end, QB2, I think in Dynasty there. I want to pull this up because we were talking about who's the QB1. Love our guy Fizz. He's a Lamar Jackson guy. You know what? 2-time MVP. Can't hate on it.
Not going to argue.
And I'm gonna throw this up because Scampers, I love you, buddy. He wouldn't want to be the one to feed a carrot to a hungry lion. Let's be real here.
Nor would I.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to the Detroit Lions. The upstart, they finally figured some shit out, right? Brad Holmes, 4th season as GM. Dan Campbell, 4th season as head coach. Ben Johnson pulled himself out of the head coaching search last year and is sticking around to continue to run this offense for the 3rd straight season. All right, Jared Goff, fresh off a 4-year, $212 million extension. He is 30 years old. Their running back room, last year's free agent pickup, David Montgomery, is heading into his 6th season. He's 27. Jahmyr Gibbs, their their first round pick from 2023. He's heading into his 2nd season at 22 years old. Amon-Ra St. Brown, their leading receiver at 25. Jameson Williams is heading into his 3rd season, although it still kind of feels like a rookie season considering how few games he's played. He's 23. No real wide receivers of note after them, sadly, which is kind of weird, but hey, whatever. Sam LaPorta, their star tight end rookie from last year, he's heading into his 2nd season, and he is 23. All right. Let's start with the running backs. What is Jahmyr Gibbs' ceiling? And the biggest reason I want to bring this up, Joel, is because our own Ryan Weiss wrote one of our Look Inside articles on Jahmyr Gibbs this week. He was trying to make the case for why Jahmyr Gibbs could be the number 1 overall wide receiver in fantasy for 2024. He couldn't do it. Everything that he pointed out, it still fell about 60 points shy of what Christian McCaffrey put out last year. But still, the RB2, not too shabby. So I ask you, Joel, what is Jahmyr Gibbs' ceiling, especially considering that David Montgomery is still in the fold?
I think that all depends on his usage, right? I mean, if Montgomery tears his ACL tomorrow and Gibbs is the unquestioned number one back in this backfield and he pushes 300 touches, I don't think that's likely. Obviously,
300 touches.
Well, yeah, that's the question. Would they give it to him, or would they bring in, another Zonovan Knight or somebody like that too? Because they always have those guys at the bottom of their roster. How much are they going to trust them? Yeah, I think he's good enough that if he gets that usage and if he can handle that usage and he can show that he can do it through the full season, he can get himself into the RB1 discussion. I mean, he's already on the periphery of that discussion right now, right? It's Bijan, Breece, how much you want to hold on to McCaffrey. And then like Gibbs is right there. I think he's probably in the community wise, he's probably well above Taylor and Barkley and probably HN, who would be the next group. And so I think he's kind of right on the periphery of tier 1, tier 2. So yeah, in any given season, I can see him being the RB1 in a season. And then he's certainly young. He's only 22. So I could certainly see that transferring into the community saying he is the RB1, especially if, we see a Bijan Robinson season that looks very much like last season and isn't the kind of massive step forward that everyone's kind of expecting post Arthur Smith. Or, if we see a little bit of decline from McCaffrey and now people are more concerned about the age, Breece Hall just has a non-elite season, then yeah, I could certainly see him ascending to kind of the consensus RB1.
So I find this really interesting because I know a lot of people that kind of before Gibbs was even drafted, they were throwing out comparisons to Alvin Kamara. And, I didn't hate it, but I feel like that what Kamara brings from a contact balance perspective is so unmatched in the NFL right now. And I think that's what's going to help Kamara continue to be effective for the next few years. When Gibbs got drafted by the Lions, it was a very easy, he's going to play that Alvin Kamara role because there's so many things that this offense does that is very similar to philosophies that the Saints had when Sean Payton was there because Dan Campbell was there, right? They want that 2 running back setup. They want the Ingram. They want the Kamara. That's why they went out and they got David Montgomery. Montgomery plays that Mark Ingram role. They draft Gibbs to play that Alvin Kamara role. We've never seen the RB1 season from Alvin Kamara. He's always been really good. He was the RB4, I think, his rookie season. He offers so much in the way of receiving value that I understand the idea that, hey, Gibbs can very easily be a top 5 guy, right? And I think that can happen. And right now, even in redraft, he's being drafted that way. And we saw 10 touchdowns rushing last year, which is a great sign. We know he can pile up touchdowns. That's great. 70 fantasy points Jahmyr Gibbs scored in the 3 games that David Montgomery missed. That is a huge chunk of his season last year. That's almost a third of his fantasy points. Yep. If David Montgomery plays 16 games, I don't know that Gibbs' ceiling is really there. And that's a little worrisome when you factor in his value.
Yeah, I mean, Gibbs did miss a couple of games himself, remember?
Yeah.
But your point is absolutely valid. The other thing I think that works in his favor is that they may have the best. I mean, they're right there with the Eagles for the best offensive line in the league, and it's probably not close, right? There's probably a huge gap between those two and the next team down. So I think that's going to work in his favor. You talked about Kamara and his contact balance. I mean, I would say that Gibbs' elusiveness is just as elite as Kamara's contact balance is. So you put him on, you give him, you put him in a team that can get him into space and let that elusiveness be, the factor that it can be. and I think that adds it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if Montgomery is healthy, plays 16 games, like he's going to be the goal line hammer. That's just a fact. That there's just no way around it. So yeah, I think that limits. I think it limits Gibbs' touchdown upside a little bit.
That's fair. All right, I dig that. All right, so I want to move on to this next guy here because I feel like a lot of the community is really soured on him, and I think where he lands is ultimately going to decide how much pass catching volume Jahmyr Gibbs can have going forward, and that's Jameson Williams. This team gave up a first-round pick to move up in the first round to get him. So they have invested a lot in Jameson Williams. He had 9 targets in his first season because of, coming off of the torn ACL. Second season, gets popped for gambling, missed 6 games. He hasn't even played a full 17 games in the NFL, and everybody is writing this kid off. We saw the type of overall talent that he offered both at Ohio State and then at Alabama. He can do a little bit of everything, and it kind of feels like the Lions are sort of typecasting him as you're just a go route receiver, and that's it. And you know what? There's value in that from an NFL perspective. So where does he land not only in this offense from a target share, but from a dynasty perspective where obviously we need more than just long balls?
Yeah, we talked about this before the show a little bit. Like I was very high on Jameson Williams coming out of college. I was the one making excuses for him when everybody said, oh, he had to leave Ohio State because he had 2 better guys in front of him, went to Alabama, was really good. So yeah, I thought he was the best prospect in the class. That was obviously wrong. So I'll take the L on that one. We've heard kind of whispers that they're trying to get him more involved in like more than just a 9 route guy in camp, like you said, because that's all he's really been to this point. It's just where do the touches come from on this offense? I mean, you've got a veritable target hog in Amon-Ra St. Brown. You've got Sam LaPorta. You've got Gibbs and Montgomery. That's what is his place? I mean, he's no better than a 4th wheel at best. So yeah, I think at this point, his dynasty ceiling is basically a Deshaun Jackson type. I think that's really his best case scenario is that he's a guy who's probably going to have some boom weeks, but he's a guy that's like, if they get out to a big lead and just want to sit on, this could be a team that just sits on the ball in the second half, kind of like the Eagles did in 22, right? You get the big leads, you get double-digit halftime lead, and they just bleed clock for the entire second half, and he just has minimal value. So, yeah, he's not someone I'm super high on. If the market is believing the camp hype, I'm selling for basically whatever I can get. I don't have a whole lot of shares, so it's not.
I was going to say, I don't think the only one that I had, I traded the year that he was drafted for Devontae Adams in a package to get Devontae. Yeah, when I was going through and doing my projections for 2024, I'm not near as high on Sam LaPorta as others. Like, I know there's so many people that are out there drafting him to once again repeat as the tight end 1, and we had Liz Loza on Wednesday's show, and that was my big case. I was like, he can't, you're drafting him into ceiling.
Yeah, I agree.
He had 10 touchdowns last year. No other tight end had 6. Right. Put him at 6 touchdowns. He's a tight end 5. His value literally comes from touchdowns, and we know how fluky those numbers are. With this team literally telling us we want to get Jameson Williams more involved. And I get it. Coach speak isn't always believable. I think if there's any coach out there that's going to tell you what they think and feel, it's Dan Campbell. If Dan Campbell wants to get Jameson Williams the football, they're going to do anything and everything they can to get Jameson Williams the football. And if that's the case, who do you think whose target share does that come from? Because to me, it's Sam LaPorta. It's not Jahmyr Gibbs, and it's certainly not Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, I think that's the obvious one. But Yeah, I'm not gonna, I can't argue.
There are very
I
few tight ends that are going to see 120 targets.
Yeah, I agree with you on LaPorta. He's not my tight end one. So I would have Kelsey and McBride ahead of him. But I still think he's going to be a very big part of the offense. But yes, if Jameson Williams is going to get more exposure, then it has to come from, some of it has to come from Amon-Ra and some of it has to come from LaPorta. I mean, that's the only way the math works.
So I'm really curious to see, let's say that Jameson Williams puts up let's say a 60 plus catch, like low 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns, which I understand this is his 3rd season when, that used to be the metric for wide receiver breakouts, right? This is really his 2nd season. Would you start to buy in then and say, you know what, maybe there's a place to believe in him? Or are you literally just using that to, hey, let me see if I can get a 1st-round pick and be done with it?
I think that really depends on, I'd want to know what the targets are, right? Because if you get 60 catches on 100 targets.
Well, let's say it's about 100 targets, right? Because, I mean, that's about a 60% catch rate.
Yeah.
And I think for a guy who's probably going to be downfield more, I think 60% is roughly about it.
Yeah, if that's the case, then I think his usage is basically the same. If he's like 60 catches on 85 targets, now I think they're using him in a different way, and that gets me much more interested. So now I think you're kind of getting him the ball in space, kind of like we talked with Gibbs. You're getting him the ball in space instead of just chucking it deep and letting him go that way. So then it becomes much more interesting. So yeah, if it's 100 targets, then that's I think that's probably a ceiling season for him and kind of move on. That's what he is. If he's, if the catch rate improves, if the usage improves in a different way, then I start to get interested. Yes.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Let's go to the last one. Tease them a little bit. We need to have this conversation. Sam LaPorta. Should he be the tight end 1 in Dynasty? Because apparently he already is. Point blank period.
Not mine. Yeah. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. I don't think he has the target share in this offense to support him being a tight end 1. Now, again, this gets back to the tight end premium, non-tight end premium. I think there's going to be touchdown volume. I don't think that's a fluke. I don't think the 10 touchdowns is a fluke. I don't think touchdowns are always fluky to an extent, but I think he's always going to be involved at the goal line. So, yeah, in a non-tight end premium, you want to make that argument that he has the highest touchdown upside. I'm with you. I can buy that. In a tight end premium, we talked about the target options on this team and a team that, like we said, may just end up sitting on the ball quite a bit, and because they may have a lot of big leads. He's never going to top Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra is the alpha. They've paid him like an alpha. He's always going to be the target eater in this offense. And then you've got Gibbs, you've got Montgomery, you've got Jameson Williams. So, yeah, I think LaPorta is always going to be a bit of a second wheel. Seems a bit pejorative because I think he's much more important than that. But I would much rather have a McBride. I would much rather have a Kelsey who are going to be kind of alphas in their offense more than I expect LaPorta to be.
Yeah,
I'd rather have an Andrews, to be honest.
Yeah, I think to me, LaPorta, and I kind of hate saying this because it feels like I'm just, comparing them because of the school they went to. But based on the weapons around him, I feel like Sam LaPorta is just the next George Kittle, right?
Yep.
The difference is that Kittle gets a lot of his work from, downfield catches, right? They use him a lot. Like he has a high yards per reception. Sam LaPorta was under 10.5 last year. A lot of his value is from touchdowns. But in any given week, he could be the 4th or 5th option, right? Some weeks he might be the first option. So there's going to be a lot of ebbs and flows, I think, with his production potentially. This year, though, maybe not, because they play 14 dome games this year, and that's what Jared Goff thrives in. So maybe just don't start LaPorta when they play in Green Bay and in Chicago, but just start him everywhere else, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's almost certainly a starter, right? You're not going to have many better options, but If you just, if it's one or the other, comparing them to the other guys, I would rather have those other guys that I mentioned. But yeah, he's certainly in that top tier, right? Because he's going to have that weekly upside that is unmatched by 95% of the other tight ends in the league.
Agreed. Yeah. My biggest thing with double-digit touchdowns, you come out, you score that as a rookie. Okay, cool. I'm not going to pretend that you can continually score 10-plus touchdowns based off one season. I need to see that repeatedly. And I'll look at someone like Derrick Henry as a prime example. I believe he has 6 straight seasons of 10-plus rushing touchdowns. Like, that tells me that when I do my projections, that's easy. 10, boom, move along, right? I can't do that with somebody that's only been in the league once. So, it's kind of where I sit with that. All right.
Once is a point. Derrick Henry's a trend.
Well, precisely. And that's kind of my point. So, all right. Let's move on to the Baltimore Ravens. A lot of organizational stability here. Eric DaCosta, the GM, he's in his 6th season, but he's been with the organization a very long time, learned from the great Ozzie Newsome. John Harbaugh, 17 season he's heading into here with the Baltimore Ravens as head coach. New offense, or I say new, he was the new offensive coordinator last year, but Todd Monken is heading into his 2nd season. But this is what I find very interesting. Todd Monken was brought in to open up the passing game of this offense, and they still just ran the fucking football. And then they go out and they get Derrick Henry this offseason because, they're going to throw the football, right? Fuck out of here. Lamar Jackson is their starting quarterback. He's 27 heading into his 7th season. Derrick Henry, the aforementioned, signed a 2-year, $16 million free agent contract. He's 30. Not a good thing. But this is Derrick Henry we're talking about, people. No other real running backs to note, but I guess if you really want to know, they do have Keaton Mitchell coming back from a ACL injury. They still have Justice Hill, and then they drafted Rasheen Ali this past season. Their pass catchers, again, not the deepest group, but this team doesn't throw the football very much, so high target shares, hopefully. Zay Flowers heading into his 2nd season, he's 24. Rashad Bateman heading into his 4th season, also 24. They did just give him a 3-year extension, which was really surprising considering Rashad Bateman has had some struggles, mostly just staying healthy, not necessarily from a production standpoint. But Mark Andrews heading into his 7th season, he's 29. And then the only tight end handcuff in the NFL, Isaiah Likely heading into his 3rd season, he's 24. All right. Don't really feel like there's a lot of surprises maybe here, so we're just going to get to the obvious. Let's start with Zay Flowers. He was their 1st-round pick a year ago. I think the biggest question with Zay Flowers isn't necessarily can he be, a great wide receiver, not just in the NFL, but in fantasy. But can he supersede this offense, right? We feel like there's limitations because this team is going to run the football. You don't sign Derrick Henry and say, we're going to throw the football more. Lamar Jackson, we know what he's able to do from a rushing perspective. Very much like Josh Allen, probably want to reserve those legs a little bit, right? And we've seen elite passing seasons from Lamar Jackson in the past. He has 2 seasons over 26 passing touchdowns. Last year, he had 24 and won an MVP. We know he can throw the football. It's just how often is he going to do it and where is he going to go with it? Odds are it's going to be to Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews, right? Zay Flowers had the highest targets per game on this team last year. Can he get over that 7 target per game hump? And what realistically can he be in this offense, in your opinion?
I think the thing he has working for him is that this offense kind of mitigates his kind of personal downsides, and that his size is an issue, right? He's not a big guy. He's fast, but he's not big. So I think because it's such a run-heavy offense and because you've got kind of Andrews kind of eating up a lot of space in the intermediate area, it gives him a lot of room and a lot of leeway to kind of move around and get himself into space. But yeah, I mean, he had more targets than I expected last year. He was over 100 targets, but just didn't do a whole lot with them. Now, when you look at the playoffs, he kind of took his game to another level. So the question becomes, was that a 2-game blip against, kind of elite competition, or, is that a sign of things to come? it's tough to project him to get like it's tough to project him to the kind of elite target share that I think he would need to become like a consistent like wide receiver 2, top 20, top 24 wide receiver. As much as we may like the talent, it's really tough to see him kind of consistent. Like, are there going to be seasons where he's in that area? Sure, but I just don't know that he's going to be ever able to consistently provide that kind of production.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Zay Flowers, I think he can get there from a target share percentage.
Yeah.
Because Todd Monken has that history of, hey, when I've got a wide receiver 1, I'm going to throw him the football 24 to 25% of the time. He's never obviously had a tight end like Mark Andrews, but Mark Andrews can be a top 3 tight end with a 20% target share because that's just the tight end position, and Mark Andrews is that good. With Zay, it boils down to the volume that comes with that target share, right? Lamar Jackson's not going to be a quarterback that throws the football 550 plus times. It's just not going to be the case. So you're looking at a 24 to 25% target share on the high end of maybe 500 target or 500 pass attempts, right? I believe Lamar Jackson only threw the football 464 times. Maybe double check that, Joel. But and Zay had, like I said, he averaged, I believe it was about 6.7 targets a game. There's room for growth there. When I went through and I did my projections, I've got him at about, I think, 122 targets. He had 5 receiving touchdowns last year. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he can get 7 or 8 this year. But he's going to kind of live between 11 and 12 yards per reception. And without getting on the higher side of 13 or 14, I think we're really just kind of looking at a top 24 guy, and that's not a bad thing.
No.
It's, safe, it's consistent, but you would probably feel a lot more comfortable if he was your dynasty wide receiver 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Really.
On
a stack
457 attempts for Lamar. So you're
okay. Not too far off.
Right. Yeah. So I think we're pretty much in agreement that, I think he can be wide receiver 24, wide receiver 25. I don't know that there's any ceiling for, he would have to have a real massive touchdown spike to kind of top that. And for a guy his size, in this offense, I just don't see that coming.
Yeah, I'm with it, especially when Derrick Henry's going to score 20 touchdowns this year on the ground.
And Lamar's going to have double digits himself.
Yeah, right. All right, well, let's move on to the other pass game weapon here, and that's Mark Andrews. I just one simple, basic question, Joel. Why have people forgotten about Mark Andrews?
I don't know. The hip drop? I don't know.
It's unfathomable to me.
Agreed.
I think he has 3 seasons over 800 receiving yards from a tight end, which I think really only Travis Kelce and maybe George Kittle can say that are currently in the NFL. But it really feels like the young guys are just what people want, and it's weird to me when we're looking dynasty because the 2 positions where age is less of a factor are quarterback and tight end. Running back, I completely understand. Wide receiver to a degree, I understand. Mark Andrews probably has another 7 years, maybe even 8 years of being a really good tight end. He's proven that he is a really good tight end. And yet people want to take largely unproven guys like a Dalton Kincaid, a Trey McBride, a Sam LaPorta, a Kyle Pitts over Mark Andrews. And it makes literally no sense to me.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, PFF grades are what they are, right? They're flawed, but big picture, they provide some value. His career PFF grade, 73.5, 88.5, 76.5, 91.5, 80.7, 78.8. That's pretty freaking elite.
And he has 40 touchdowns in 6 seasons.
Yeah. I mean, he's been basically 30% better than an average tight end at least 30% better than an average tight end every single year he's been in the league.
Yeah, and he played 10 games last year and scored 6 touchdowns. So, like, and this is my thing, like, the same thing that I brought up with Sam LaPorta, right? Like, he scored 10 touchdowns last year. Great, cool. Where's the consistency, right? The last 5 years, Mark Andrews, 10, 7, 9, 5, 6. He scores touchdowns. And like I said, 6 touchdowns last year in 10 games. He plays a full 17-game season. He probably beats Sam LaPorta in touchdowns.
Yep. I mean, that's why I said the hip drop that took him out for the last third of the season. That's why people have forgotten about it. That's the only reason I come up with.
Unfathomable to me. I mean, it's one thing, he does only have the 1 year over 1,000 yards, which I feel like that was kind of the anomaly year with Baltimore. That was the year that Lamar only played, I believe it was 12 games, and they actually threw the football over 600 times, get 153 targets that year. But even if you take that out as like the one statistical anomaly season, he still has 3 seasons over 88 targets. Like I mentioned, 3 other seasons over 700 yards, and he still scores touchdowns consistently. He's a favorite of Lamar Jackson. When Lamar is in the red zone, if he's not running, he's looking at Mark Andrews. People, fucking get with it, man. This guy is still a top 3 dynasty tight end, in my opinion.
Agreed.
And if you don't, just fucking draft his backup, man. It doesn't skip a beat with Isaiah Likely in the lineup, man. No kid's really freaking good. All right. Last but not least, the man throwing the football. Lamar Jackson. He's not built like Anthony Richardson or Josh Allen. So will the legs give out eventually? I mean, he's heading into year 7 now. There's some wear and tear here. Coming off his second MVP season, obviously we know he doesn't throw the football that much, so he does tend to rely on his legs. The legs are really what keeps his dynasty value insulated, right? Because of what he offers from a rushing perspective, the high rushing touchdowns, high rushing volume. I believe he has 2 career 1,000-yard rushing seasons. I think those are definitely in the past, probably not going forward. But if he can consistently throw for 3,000 yards, 25 plus touchdowns, and then tack on the 600 or 700 yards rushing, he can probably remain as that top 5 dynasty tight end. But how much longer realistically do you think he's got?
He's only 27. I think people think he's older than he is because he was I think he was a full senior when he came out, but he's only 27. He's not that old. He's not someone because of his build, he's not like a Josh Allen. He's not like an Anthony Richardson who's kind of invite contact and just kind of, try and run people over. He's always been smarter, with his body than that. And he's obviously very elusive. So I'm not worried about it anytime soon.
He has 875 career rush attempts. Like I said, that's a lot of wear and tear on the tires. I mean, we talk about running backs after 4 years in the NFL, they're toast, right? Well, if this running back has over 200 carries a season, that's 4 years worth right there.
It is, but running backs lose their value because that's all they have. Like Lamar Jackson's freaking quarterbacks, and he's really good quarterback.
I get that, I understand that, but that's what I'm getting at. It's like it's almost like a starting pitcher. Like when they get towards the tail end of their career and they just don't have the juice to be able to go 6-7 innings consistently, and they transition into a relief pitcher. Lamar has to transition into a pocket passer if he can't run, right? Can he do that? I don't know that he can. That's what I'm getting at, because his dynasty value is tied so much into his legs and what he offers as a runner. We've also never 6 seasons over 130 carries. That's 5 seasons over 130. Sorry.
We've also never seen him operate run in an offense that was built around his arm, right? It's always been built around his legs. So we don't know. So there's a question about him transitioning into that pocket passer, but he's never been an offense that's kind of been built around that. So he could be an elite. He could be an elite quarterback in an offense that wants to use him that way. We just don't know. So yeah, I'm not, like I say, I'm not concerned about it yet. I'm not concerned about it. I'm not concerned about Josh Allen. I'm certainly not concerned about Lamar Jackson transitioning that way.
All right. Fair enough. All right. Let's get to the final segment before we sign off here. Who are we selling from these three teams? And let's start with the Buffalo Bills, because I purposely left this guy off so that you could talk about him.
Yeah, for me, it's James Cook. I was never a believer in him coming out. I think people kind of compared him to his brother, and they're very different kinds of players. His kind of rushing, his goal, his goal area, gold zone, whatever you want to call it, transition. The ability to turn those rushes into touchdowns has never been great. He's been pretty bad. I think that's why they brought Ray Davis in, and that he could be more of a kind of traditional goal line back. So, I think if the market says that this is going to be a more run heavy team and James Cook is going to be the beneficiary of that, then I want to get out on him now. And I don't think he's someone who's going to age well. So if this is his peak, I want to get out a year too early rather than a year late.
Yeah, I mean, so much of James Cook lies in his efficiency, right? We know he's a good receiver, but Josh Allen's not the kind of guy that's going to throw to a running back 80 plus times because of what he can offer with his legs. So, for as good as Cook is as a receiver, his ceiling from that side is still capped, right? He only had 2 rushing touchdowns last year and rushed for 1,100 yards. So unless he's getting up there to 6-7 rushing touchdowns, I'm with you. I wouldn't hate selling. I just feel like, especially if you're a contender, what are you realistically getting back if you're moving James Cook, who can clearly help you from a depth perspective?
Yeah, I think he's someone who, like, if I was a rebuilder, that's the kind of quote unquote young guy that I want to try and actively move. I don't want to build do a rebuild
100%
built around him. That's a guy I want to get out on now.
That's fair. All right. Big sell from the Lions, who we already talked about.
Yeah, I thought Jameson Williams was too obvious. So LaPorta for me, like you said, I think he is. Well, I don't think he is valued as the tight end 1 in Dynasty, and I don't think he is. So if I can get any of those guys below him and something else tacked on, whether it's McBride, Kelsey, Andrews, Pitts, Kincaid, who we talked about, if I can get any of those guys plus something else, even I would go down to Njoku, Kittle. If I can move off of LaPorta, get those guys in like a first or something else, I'm more than happy to do it.
And from the Ravens,
I think there's really nobody I want to sell that has any real value. So I'll say Bateman, just because they gave him the extension. We've heard a lot of puff from Harbaugh and from Monken about how he's a different guy this year. Again, if somebody wants to believe that, and I have Rashad Bateman, which I don't have a lot of, then yeah, I'm actively trying to get out.
I have quite a bit of Rashad Bateman. It hurts. I loved him coming out of college. I really did. I've kind of just sort of been hanging on for dear life and just hoping that he just comes out firing in week 1. I'd be like, ring the bell, come get him. I'll take a second.
Yeah. One good game. That's all I need is one good game. And then I can move him.
All right. I'm going to bring this up from Gator because you mentioned selling LaPorta. Is it just because of where you have to take him in drafts if he's the new Travis Kelce?
Yeah, I don't think, like I said, I don't think he's bad. I would certainly have him in my top tier of dynasty tight ends, but I think he's, like you just said, I think he's valued as the tight end 1, and I don't think he should be valued that high. I think he's a top tier tight end. I don't think he's the tight end 1.
Yeah, so at that point, you're just trading him to take advantage of the value.
Exactly.
Which I completely get. Even moving to Kelce, which I think is a little bit more of a stretch just because of the age gap, but there's still going to be, Kelsey's going to be good for 2-3 more years. take advantage of that extra piece, maybe draft the next up and coming, rookie tight end or whatever. But I mean, we see all the time with rookie tight ends, they take some time to develop. This isn't the norm, right? Like, it's not, even Trey McBride wasn't great his rookie season, right? Like, he didn't pop until
he did
last
nothing
year.
his rookie season.
Yeah, he did absolutely nothing. And I traded Daniel Bellinger and a 3rd-round pick in a tight end premium league to get Trey McBride right before last season. Those are the types of moves that you want to make, right? Yeah. So, I sold Kyle Pitts right after his rookie season in one league and got a freaking fortune. One other league, I've been holding on to him because I have Travis Kelce. And I'm like, you know what? I'll pair him with a young guy. That's fine. Like, I'll take advantage of that, and, we'll see kind of what builds. So that's the thing with tight ends. Like, it never hurts to have a good young one. I don't know that I love the idea of flipping a LaPorta for Kelce, but I'm fine, like, maybe tiering or going from like a LaPorta to a McBride or a LaPorta to Kincaid plus or even a Pitts plus, right? That's kind of the move that I would prefer to make with LaPorta. But I personally, if I could get Andrews and a first for LaPorta, I would do that.
Yeah.
I like that idea a little bit better than getting like maybe Kelce in a 2nd or 3rd.
But if you think about it, like if you take LaPorta's season and just dump it into Mark Andrews' career, it doesn't look out of place, right? It fits right in. So if the community is valuing him that much higher than Andrews because of the age and because he did it as a rookie instead of part of it, a career of doing that, I think that's a mistake. So if you can get some excess value by tiering off LaPorta to a Kelce, to an Andrews, to these guys who have done it for an entire career, I think that makes sense.
That's fair. All right, man. That will do it. Good show, buddy.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks everybody for checking in. Appreciate it. Had a ton of action in the chat. We always love that. So,
and for everybody that's watching over on Twitter, why the fuck did you not click the link and head over to YouTube where all the good fun stuff is? Be sure to like and subscribe, hit that video. We're just over 1,100 subs on YouTube and continually growing. And you know what? It costs you literally nothing to push a freaking button. Come on, people. Anyway. So much stuff to do here over at Club Fantasy. We have 9 shows a week, people. A lot of great content, new shows literally popping up every day. You've got us on Sundays, Mocking with the Stars on Monday, one of our 3 mock draft shows that we do. Masterclass on Tuesday nights. It's our high stakes best ball show. Our flagship, no pun intended, on Wednesdays. We have our Dynasty Trade Show, Trade Blocked with Joel, Hoove, and Dusty on Thursdays at 8. We also have our 2nd mock draft show, Mock Girl Summer, in partnership with Women in Fantasy Football on Thursday nights at 10. Friday night is our OG mock draft show, Mock It Like It's Hot, with Ryan and Austin on Friday nights at 8. And we have Summer School, our intro to best ball show. New episodes dropping Saturday mornings, and we're getting ready to launch Cram Session on Monday. These are going to be Austin and Matt breaking down each and every one of the Week 17 matchups to better help with your correlation as you draft those Best Ball Mania tournaments or any of the other best ball tournaments with whatever site that you like to draft on. So much good stuff that we have here at Club Fantasy. You can check out the website, clubfantasyffl.com. We are knee deep in our Look Inside team previews. New articles popping up each and every week. We've got, I believe, Mark Andrews' article dropping today. We'll have Brandon Aiyuk and I believe Xavier Worthy dropping later this week coming up. Then, of course, you can check out all of the previous player spotlight articles from the Look Inside series over there. And of course, be sure to check out Dynasty Nerds. It's our partner here with Club Fantasy. Anything and everything that you need from a Dynasty perspective, trust me, they have it. Rankings, articles, trade calculators. Their Dynasty GM tool is invaluable when it comes to helping you take home those Dynasty championships. And look, if you want to scout some prospects, they're all 22 film room unmatched, I promise you. So head over to dynastynerds.com, When you decide on the membership that you want, you can do monthly, you can do yearly. Enter promo code Club Fantasy, save yourself 15%. Once again, that's dynastynerds.com. Use promo code Club Fantasy, save yourself 15%, and join the Nerd Herd today. Tell them Club Fantasy said thanks. Appreciate that. All right. For Joel, at the Joel Wirth over on the Twitter machine, I am the one Hudsonian. Once again, follow Club Fantasy at Club Fantasy FFL, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. And be sure to follow Women of Fantasy Football. That's at women_FF on Twitter and Instagram. Because trust me, you want to do that as we head into August. It is our WAF event series. We will be interviewing a slew of women in this industry, not just football. It spans across all industries, I promise you. It's going to be a lot of fun times. We'll be doing our jersey raffles as we raise money for our WAF Galvanize Scholarship Fund, which benefits Galvanize, an organization founded by NFL and Fox Sports reporter Laura Oakman. So we'll have some announcements coming out on Wednesday after NPI. We finish up our team previews there. Trust me, a lot of good things around the corner. So be sure to like, subscribe, follow us, do all those good things that we mentioned. You will not be disappointed, I promise you. Take it easy, everybody.